Hello friends, my name is Sonia, this is Sonia with an I, and today I am bringing you my February reading wrap-up. February is the shortest month of the year with only having 28 days, but I am really feeling quite proud that I put those days to work. I read 14 books, yes, 14 books in February. That is a lot for me. I usually average about 10, and I feel really good when I do that. So that has been excellent as far as I'm concerned when it comes to reading. Now, I will also say that I better be getting some sort of gold star, some sort of praise, accolade, some sort of award or statue. My name needs to be engraved somewhere. Because I'm over here telling you, I read every book on my pile of possibilities. Yep, I'll wait for that gold star to appear. I read every book on my pile of possibilities. I have never done that. So you can't tell me nothing. Nope. Can't tell me nothing because I'm stunned. I'm shook. What can I say? I did a lot of reading this month. Now, it did help that I was sick a week, and it did help that we had snow where we were like, you couldn't move for a week. And when you can't do those things, then you read. And, well, at least I read. So that's kind of where that landed. I also read, I read a lot of fast-paced books, which, of course help. But you know what? You can't tell me nothing. 5 stars for me. Give me a big gold star and a pat on the back. Let's talk about some of those books. So I want to mention a book that I forgot to mention in January that I did read. I read Marsh Madness by Jana De Leon. This is the 2,630th book in the series. I don't know if it's that quite, but I don't know if that's serious. But it is Misfortune Mystery number 28. This series, if you love cozy mysteries, if you like humor in your cozy mysteries, you will love this series. The first one is Louisiana Longshot. The main character is Fortune Redding. And Fortune is a CIA assassin who gets found out by the bad guys and has to move to this little bitty town called Sinful, Louisiana to hide out. And she ends up making some octogenarian friends who have some secrets of their own. And it is her life in Sinful, Louisiana, and then all the little turns and twists. And this is book 28. I started reading this less than 2 years ago, and I am already on 28. I adore this series. Jana De Leon has the best sense of humor. I giggle and laugh out loud. Every single book makes me laugh out loud, screenshot, and send it to my best friend. Every single book. I love it, and it is one of my most highly recommended books that I've read. The first book that I read in February was Murder at a Scottish Wedding by Tracy Hall. This book is part of the Scottish Shire Mysteries. This was book number 4. The main character's name is Paisley. Paisley owns a store called Cashmere Crush, and she is a young mother. Her son is growing very quickly. I started reading this series about sometimes last year, and it just seems like Brody was little, and now Brody is 12. I think he's 12 now. So, but she's a single mom. There's a grandfather that lives with them. I adore the grandfather. He's probably my favorite character in the whole book. She has a best friend who is like a true supportive best friend. It takes place in Scotland. I listened to it on audio, and I love the accent. I love all of the Scottishisms, I guess is the only term that I know to call it that. I hope that that's the correct way to say that. But I love all of the storytelling in it. The mystery is always interesting. It's just a series that I really greatly enjoy. The next book that I read is I stayed within the series, and I read the number 5, Murder at a Scottish Castle by Tracy Hall, part of the Scottish Shire series. Both Murder at a Scottish Wedding and Murder at a Scottish Castle were 5-star reads for me. The next book that I read was a gift from my friend Mitzi at Mitzi Reads and Writes. If you watched our Christmas exchange, you know she gave me the Unexpected Mrs. Pollifax. This was on my TBR shelf, and by Dorothy Gilman. This book was a gift from Mitzi. I ate this up. I adored this book. Mrs. Pollifax is in her 60s, and her husband has passed, and her children have their own lives, and she just doesn't quite know what to do with herself. So she decides, you know what? I always wanted to be a spy. And so she goes and just walks herself right up into the CIA and tells them that she would like to apply for a spy position. And there's a mix-up and a miscommunication, and she ends up going out in the fields, going to Mexico to be a tourist. And the adventure that happens in this, the spirit of Mrs. Pollifax, I laughed, I cried, it was suspenseful, it was, this was so good. 5 stars. This was so good. I read this while I was sick, and for me to get the sense of adventure that I got, the enjoyment that I got, this was fantastic, and I cannot wait to read another Mrs. Pollifax. Mitzi, this is a home run. Thank you for giving me this book, and thank you so much for recommending it. This is an excellent book. I cannot wait to read the rest of them. The next book that I read after Mrs. Pollifax was Murder at a Scottish Christmas by Tracy Hall, which is book number 7 in the Scottish Shire mysteries, and this is the most current. So I binged this series, and now I am completely caught up in the Scottish Shire series. So I think I want another gold star. You can do it. You can do a happy dance with me. Let's do it together. Come on, let's do it together. Dance is good exercise. Yes, so I am caught up in the Scottish Shire series. This series is a 4.55-star series for me. I thoroughly enjoy it. I didn't mind reading the Christmas, even though Christmas is over, because when I was reading this, we had tons of snow, so it felt very right. The next book that I read after that was Spring Harvest by Gladys Taver. This was on my TBR because this was my very first read for the Retro Romance Readathon that was hosted by Storm from Storm Reads and Sarah the Bookish Knitter. I always participate this, even though I'm maybe not the most enthusiastic romance reader. I really wanted to participate in this and do this. And I started with Spring Harvest because I've never read a Gladys Taver fiction book. I have read multiple of her nonfiction, but never read fiction. And this kid's was 5 stars. She can write anything she wants to write. I was a little worried because I thought, oh gosh, what if I just like her nonfiction and I don't like her fiction? I went into this thinking it was a story of 2 teenagers who were in college, and you know, that story of them falling in love and whatever. And it was so much more than that. This was not just a love story between the 2 college kids, but it was a love story of the college. There were so many different little stories in this, and it wasn't like separated. It was all this wonderful stew of different love stories of people, from the college kids to older people to community to the love of a college and a love of tradition and community. And this was so good. This was, okay, the first, it was the college kids. And the daughter, and I can't think of her name off the top of my head, but she is in love with Mike, the football player, and her dad is a college teacher and does not want her dating him. He wants her to go to a women's college, be a teacher, and then come back and teach at this college. And she doesn't want anything to do with that. She wants to get married to Mike and run away and do all of these things. And it was so interesting. Her dad is a jerk, by the way, because her dad is, and her mom is just like this angelic woman. Like, she puts up with more than I could ever put up with. And she, she's just like the perfect wife, but she has all these dreams and things that she swallows because she has to be there for her daughter and her husband. Now, this does take place in 1914. It's before the Great War, but she wrote it in 1959, and it is this college is just a small Midwestern college, but the people's love for this college, incredible. The college president and his wife, who is this like shushy foofy woman and just like very like, I can't believe I'm so much better than this, talks about their story. It talks about the president of the college's story and her love for the not the president, the dean of the college and the president and kind of their relation. It is so good. The doctor's story is in there. I mean, it's just, it's so good. And set in 1914, I mean, still over 100 years ago, okay? The story took place over 100 years ago, and it was relatable. It was so relatable. Spring Harvest by Gladys Tabor, as far as I know, is available on Libby or Hoopla in audio, or not in audiobook, but in eyeball read book, ebook. That's it. And it's available on Kindle too. I believe that but that's like the only one I've ever been able to find that's available on e-reader. This book was incredible. Like, it was just, to start off with a 5-star bang on a romance book that I'm reading for retro romance. Okay, I'm all about it. And 1914, it's pretty retro. So, great book. Please pick it up if you like stories of community and family and just people building relationships with each other, and it's a total comfort read, a total Gladys Tabor. That's going to start being a description for me, that's just a Gladys Tabor. A comfort read, total Gladys Tabor. The next book that I read was Never Love a Cowboy by Jessie DeCour. And here it is. It was part of my TBR shelf. This was a book that I picked up thrifting, and I saw it and I was like, I used to read all of these Sweet Dreams books when I was in middle school, and I may have even read this one, but I don't remember. Middle school was a minute ago. Anyway, in this story, it's just one of those little, little quick, I used to call them Harlequin romances. But Bitsy is the main character, and Bitsy is a fish out of water from Brooklyn. And she has moved to Austin, Texas. Yes, she's moved to Austin, Texas, and on her first day of school, she's walking with a friend that she's just made, and this handsome cowboy comes riding beside her on a horse, riding a horse to school. Now, this is not the norm, but she sees him in this instant fall in love. Okay, it's cheesy. It's cheesy. Yeah, I promise it's cheesy. But as she's getting to know him, she starts to get to know some of the other kids. And, she's the hot ticket because she's the new girl in town. Like, the head football player wants to date her, and the head cheerleader is who the cowboy is interested in. But she's too good for him because he's poor and he doesn't drive a nice car. He has a beat up old truck, and he wears beat up old clothes, and he rodeos, and he does all these things. So there's that romance story. What I was most impressed with is that Bitsy wants to start a radio station for the school. She wants to do a radio program because she doesn't feel like the students are informed with what's going on in the school. Like, there was a rodeo and no one knew about it. There was a dance, and they're not knowing what's going on. So she decides that she's going to wrangle up all these people to do news stories. And then as she's talking about doing like school stories, she decides that she wants to do something a little meatier, and they do an investigative story about low wages for immigrants. I'm like, okay, 1982. That's pretty impressive. So they do this investigation, and the cowboy helps her with that. They end up, building their relationship that way. And it was really cute. I really enjoyed this. I gave it 3 stars. It was cheesy in a lot of ways. It was, there's some things that didn't date well, but the fact, I was so impressed with like her wanting to do this investigative reporting about something that was completely unfair. And that I enjoyed this. I did not normally. I read these and roll my eyes. This, I would if someone said, "Hey, I want a retro romance," this is one I would say, "Hey, you might enjoy this. Read this." The next book that I read was South of the Buttonwood Tree by Heather Weber. This is my second Heather Weber book, and at first I was like, "Ooh, I'm not going to like this as much as the Mystery of the Blackbird or Midnight at the Blackbird Cafe." I gave that 5 stars. I read that in January. Absolutely loved it. I read this one, started reading this one, and the main character's name is Blue Bishop, and she is a children's book illustrator, but she wants desperately to be a mom. And she has tried to adopt, and it just hasn't worked out. And in her community, there's this tree called the Buttonwood tree, and you can go down to that tree, and the tree will give you a wish. It will give you a button that has some sort of message from beyond in it. This is magical realism. And so she has done this before, but it really hasn't meant much to her. And suddenly this newborn baby appears, and the Buttonwood tree tells people to give the baby to Blue Bishop. And there's another character in this, Sarah Grace, and Sarah Grace is the daughter of the mayor, and Sarah Grace is kind of going through some things herself, and Sarah Grace's mom is trying to pressure her to take the baby away from Blue, and she hasn't told her mother about some of her own secrets. And now there's an investigation about where, who's the baby's mama. And the Buttonwood tree is only giving little pieces of information. At first, as I said, it was slow. I was like, this is one of those. I love the one book I read, pick up another one by the same author, and it just doesn't meet up to the expectations. Y'all, once it hit, it hit. It's like tequila with me. Once it hits, it hits. This hit hard. 5 stars. Once I established the backstory and things started getting, I couldn't put this down. I stayed up till 4 a.m. reading this book. It's good then. Heather Weber, 2 5 stars for me. She might be becoming a favorite author. If you like magical realism, cozy, family drama, southern small town, pick this up. Found family. Oh my gosh, the found family in this is just stellar. Pick this up. This was a fantastic read. I'm so glad that I read this. The next book that I read was Redwall by Brian Jacques. I think it's how you say his name. I have wanted to read Redwall for ages. I have seen it in my library. It looks so cute and so cozy. And I got, if you know me, I got a thing for animals, and I picked it up. I did enjoy it. I believe that I gave it 3.5 stars. I thought that this would be more cozy than it was. It's a story of animals who talk, who work together, but it wasn't super cozy. It was basically the Redwall Abbey. It's a tranquil home for a community for peace-loving animals. and it's threatened by another group, the Scourge. They're savage bile rat warlords, and the rats keep trying to attack. So it's basically, the story is constant, this, attacking of Redwall and then fighting them off. Now there's friendships and relations. There's little things that are happening to there, which I enjoyed that part, but it is a lot of war, a lot of battle hoarding type things, and I like I love low stake fantasy. That is kind of my jam. I'm glad I read it. I'm not rushing to read the next one, which I own, which is Mossflower. I'm not rushing to read the next one, but I am glad that I read it. I gave it 3.5 stars. I don't know if it is labeled a children's book, but it's quite chunky for a children's book, I think. And, there's some elements in it. I mean, there's a lot of death. There's a lot of fighting. There's a lot of killing. And there's, all of those things, which, as I said, I don't really love that. I do love, like, it's set in the woodland and the woodland creatures. And, there is a main character who is kind of like the unexpected hero, which, I like those kind of stories too. So I'm not saying I didn't enjoy it. I gave it 3.5 stars. I probably will continue and read the next one. I'm just not chomping at the bit or rushing to do so. Peter Pan. Thank you very much to both Elizabeth and Mitzi, who gave me copies of Peter Pan by J.M. Barrie. I did read this in February, and I didn't love it. I hate to say that because it's a children's classic, but I mean, this right here is frameable. I love this cover. I love these are the things I loved about it. I loved the creation. I love the creativity. I love the whole inner child hanging on to your childhood, the escapism that children have. They create all these very interesting and intricate things. I love that these children can escape when, I love all of that part. I love the creativity. My goodness, the imagination that's in this it's just incredible. I did not love the racism. It was hard to read. I know it's a product of its time. I understand that, but it still doesn't make those words easier to read or listen to. I actually listened to the audio version of this by Jim Dale. I would listen to Jim Dale read the phone book. He has a voice. I listened to him read Harry Potter. I can still see myself in the car listening to him as I'm driving to school in 19, and he did a phenomenal. I think that I rated this what I did because I enjoyed Jim Dale's reading of this so much. But this story, there's some things to love in it. There really is. I think that it talks about motherhood and mothers and kind of a celebration of that. But on the other hand, it is very about not a positive for females. All of the females are pitted against each other and jealous, and it's all competition and not collaboration. And and I realize this is a story of its time, and I'm trying to get it, but it just does not hold up to me in my eyes. I realize that this is a classic. I realize that this is treasured by many, and I would never ever want to trash anybody's book, nor do I regret reading this. I'm glad that I did read it. There were points and pivots in this that I did enjoy. I was going to do a comparison of Peter Pan, the book, versus the movie. I don't know if I will or not, just because I'm afraid that I will go down a rabbit hole of my complaints about this, and I don't. That's not why I'm here on BookTube. So I am going to be honest and say that I gave this, I believe, I'm trying to remember what I scored this, or I rated this. I gave it a 2 stars, and I think I gave it an extra star just because I love Jim Dale reading it. I I do have other books that are Peter Pan related. I do plan to read them. One of them, one was a gift, and I plan to read that book. But I just it didn't hit with me. Finding Neverland is like one of my favorite movies. I was so looking forward to reading this. But as I said, it just didn't hit with me. So I did read Peter Pan. The next book that I read was Arabella by Georgette Hare. This book was a gift from my sister Tammy at Believe in Your Shelf. And I have a lot of people ask me this, but Tammy is not my real sister. She is my YouTube sister and my sister by heart. I asked her parents to adopt me because I love them so much, Jim and Ann, or Bob and Ann. So hello, Bob and Ann, Mom and Dad. She kindly sent me this beautiful vintage copy. Isn't this gorgeous? And I think it's from the 60s. I can tell from the makeup. That big, lots of eyelash, lots of eyeliner. Love it. This is, the book is not from the 60s, though. The book was written in 1949. So Arabella is the oldest daughter of a family. Her father is a vicar, and she is at the age to where she should be coming out into society. And her mother has decided, her mother has a really good friend who lives in London who doesn't have children. Her mother has decided to send Arabella to London so she can be introduced into society there, so she can get a rich husband. That whole thought process in Regency England. And she goes with her teacher, and the carriage breaks down in front of this house. Of course, the house is owned by this rich lord, and he makes a mistake of talking to his friend in her earshot, saying, "Oh, this is just some sort of ruse of some woman trying to get her hooks into me." So Arabella's like, "Ha, I'll show you," and she decides that she's going to pretend she is an heiress. And there is a lot of drama that happens between them and there. She has some issue with her brother, and in the end, things happen as they do. I enjoyed some of this story. I thought it was cute. As far as the story was cute, the storyline was cute. What was his name? The main character, the male main character, he's kind of swoony. I could see why people would be like, "Ooh, I kind of want this this is my book boyfriend," because he has some qualities that I really enjoyed. I gave this 3 stars, and I really struggled to rate this for many reasons. First of all, I don't know Regency reading much. Like I've read Bridgerton. I've watched Bridgerton. I read one Bridgerton book. I am not an expert by any means. And this author did such an amazing job. Like, you can tell she did her research. I felt like I needed a master's class in Regency time period to understand some of these things, especially when like the workers, or I hate to call them servants, but I can't really think. The servers, the people that work for them started talking, and I'm guessing it's either like a Cockney English. I didn't understand any of it. I was lost a few times. The story itself was sweet. It's a pretty girl. She has good intentions. She's smart. She's not wishy-washy. And I feel like that I should have enjoyed this more, and I wasn't prepared for class because I didn't take the master's class in Regency. I did. That's why I gave it 3 stars. I feel like the fact that I didn't enjoy this more was my fault because I didn't study. I don't know how else to put that. Robert is the main character. That's right. Robert is the main character, and I can totally understand the book boyfriend vibes for him. Like, he has many handsome qualities. So I will say, even though this book was maybe not for me, this isn't a Sonya jam, that doesn't mean that it isn't a good book. It just wasn't really my cup of tea. Now, when I go find me a Regency master's class and I become a whole expert in it, then I'll come back and be like, okay, yeah. But yes, I do not, Regency just over my head. The next book that I read was A Psalm for the Wild Built by Becky Chambers. This is a reread for me. I was wanting something cozy. I was wanting something fantastical, and this hits both marks for me. I read both of this is a series called the Monk and the Robot series. It is charming. It is delightful. I absolutely love this. It's a novella, so it's not very big. I actually listened to it. And in some of it, it's like, I feel like, once again, I feel like I'm not smart enough. Like, I don't understand all the sci-fi stuff. But listening to this the second time, I kind of melded into it a little bit better. I read it with my eyes the first time. The second time, I'm actually listening to it. The main character's name is Dex, and Dex is a sibling. Dex is what they call them. They're a T-monk, and they have a T-monk cart, and they go to different communities, and they're kind of searching for themselves. They feel a little lost. And they get into the woods, and all of a sudden, this robot comes out of the woods, introduces himself as Mosscap, and they begin this relationship. Mosscap wants to know about humans and what do they need. And Dex has not ever seen a robot because robots claimed independence hundreds of years ago and had nothing more to do with humans because they got tired of serving humans and said, we're out of here. Peace out. The descriptions of feelings and being wanted are very, very relatable. The world and daily goings on are just cozy and incredible. The backstory of why robots left the world is very interesting. Mosscap's innocence and the introduction to all of these new things that he doesn't understand, but his willingness to learn. Even though he doesn't understand it, he doesn't condemn it. He wants to learn about it. I loved that part of that. It's clever. It's enjoyable. It's just a nice, calming read. Dex is very. Dex is very reflective because they're trying desperately to find their purpose as well. So they and Mosscap are going through their lives basically with the same purpose, but not realizing it. Very cute story. I really enjoy Becky Chambers' writing and plan to read the Wayfarer series. If you've read that, tell me so in the chat, because I really do think that I would enjoy it. The next book that I read is Murder in the Afternoon by Ella Jo Sadler. This is a true crime. Yes, you heard me correct. I read a true crime. I read this story. It was written in 1975, and it is a true story of a double murder that happened in my hometown in 1949. I have most of my life heard bits and pieces of this story, but I'd never read it. I grew up seeing this in the library. I grew up seeing this in so many different places and in teachers' bookshelves. And why I had never read this is beyond me. But my Aunt Debbie gave this to me to read, and it's no longer in print. I just decided I would. And I don't rate, especially something this tragic, I don't rate other people's account of their lives or their experiences. I will say, Ella Jo is 16 years old. Her father owns a grocery store. It's in a very farm parish outside of the town that's my hometown, and they everybody lives just their happy country life. Everybody knows each other, no one locks their doors. And these two young boys, 19 and 14, walk into the grocery store, and horrific things happen. Ella Jo's bravery, first of all, her being able to remember and her bravery to tell this story is incredible. Also, she talks about how this story was necessary. Like, she had to write this so that she could forgive as God forgives. This is a Zondervan Publishing. It is a story of her journey through forgiveness and how she and her mother drew close to God, and through Christ they were able to survive a nightmare. It was, there was a lot of chilling moments in it. There was a couple of times I teared up, and it was, I know people, like, this is their family. Like, I know those people. So reading this and then actually knowing, like, I taught with a woman whose sister-in-law was one of the women who was murdered in this book. It just seems surreal to me. And to read that, it just gave me chills. I'm very thankful to have read this. And as I said, I don't rate books that are the story, that people tell their own stories of their lives. I don't feel like that's appropriate for me to rate. So Murder in the Afternoon by Ella Jo Sadler. Sadly, as I said, this is no longer in print. I think it may be an ebook available. I'm not quite sure. But if you enjoy true crime, small town, and how one uses faith to get through and to practice forgiveness, this is a good book. This is a good read. The next book that I read was pretty heavy. The next book that I read was Double Love by Francine Pascal. This was given to me by my friend Elizabeth, Lizzie Faye Loves Books. If you did not watch our Christmas exchange, I will link some of them in the description box, but please do. We had so much fun, and this was one of my Christmas gifts from Elizabeth. I have never read a Sweet Valley. It was not my thing as a teenager, even though it was readily available. This is the 1980s. I was a V.C. Andrews girl, and I should not have been reading V.C. Andrews at the age I was, but here we are. It says that this book is 12 and up, and some of the happenings in this, I was like, oh. But this is a story of two twins, Elizabeth and Jessica. Elizabeth is like the goody two shoes. She's the kind and forgiving, and Jessica's kind of the I think she's a little bit psycho, to be honest, but she's not nice. And they're very popular. They're smart. They're beautiful. They drive a red Spider. The 1980s were so obsessed with like Beverly Hills and rich high school. I mean, it totally falls in that vein. So Elizabeth has a crush on Todd, and Todd likes her too. But Jessica's decided that she is going to get Todd instead of Elizabeth. So she plays all these games to try to get Todd. And Jessica I would say she's a psycho. Her sister's a doormat. They both need help. But this is a teen book, and I need to keep it in that vein. So it's like her sister's a total snob, and like she makes fun of people. The first chapter, she's fat shaming. It's just like, but I pushed through it because it was a gift from Elizabeth. Also, I was thinking of my dear friend Sarah, because my friend Sarah loves these books. And I was like, if I want to read this so I can tell Sarah I've read Sweet Valley High. I read it. I'm glad that I read it. I don't regret it. I think I gave it 2 stars. I won't read the next one. I can see 1980s teens. I think I would have even enjoyed this at this age. But I just, yeah, now as an adult, reading it through an adult lens and reading it through a teacher lens, just kind of, eek, there's some things in here that just, I don't know. But the whole sister competition, I mean, because it definitely has a love triangle in it, and you all know I love a love triangle. But it has a love triangle in it, and just, I don't know, the lack of love for a sister. I don't have a biological sister, so maybe I don't understand. Maybe it would have been the same. I just can't imagine treating my sister like this. So, but then again, I am also an adult and she's a teen, and all of that. As I said, I don't regret reading it. I gave it 2 stars. It was fun for the Retro Romance Readathon, and it was one of the 4 that I planned to read, and I read all 4. So Retro Romance Readathon went pretty well for me. I had a 5-star, 3-star, and 2 3-stars and a 2-star, which, for someone who doesn't read a lot of romance, I'm glad that I did that. The last book that I read is Prayer for the Crown Shy by Becky Chambers, the second book in the Monk and the Robot series. And everything that I said before, it's the same. It's just a continuance of that story and Mosscap and sibling Dex's discovery of themselves. So, all right. This is a very long video. I did a lot of talking about books, and I think that I had some great reads. Have you read any of the books that I mentioned in the video? If so, let's talk about it in the comments below, or if you plan to read any of these books, I'd love to hear that. Did you participate in the Romance Readathon? Did you have, what books did you read? Let's talk about it in the comments. If you made it this far, why don't you give a girl a gold star for reading all of her books that were in her pile of possibilities? Thank you so much. You make the world a better place just by being a part of it. I appreciate you. I thank you. And until next time, happy reading. Goodbye now.